Before we speak about vitamins, let us pause and consider what acid reflux really is. It is not merely a burning sensation in the chest. It is the body whispering that balance has been disturbed, that the elegant choreography between the stomach, nerves, muscles, and protective linings is no longer synchronized. Acid reflux is less about excess acid and more about weakened defenses, impaired signaling, and tissues that have lost resilience. When we approach it with curiosity rather than fear, nutrition becomes not a weapon, but a language the body understands. Acid reflux is often misunderstood because it presents itself dramatically, with heat, discomfort, and urgency, yet its origin is rarely dramatic at all. It is usually the quiet outcome of imbalance accumulating over time. The stomach was designed to produce acid, powerful acid, and to do so safely. Problems arise not when acid exists, but when the systems meant to contain, guide, and coordinate it begin to falter. Reflux is not the enemy of acid but the consequence of weakened coordination between structure, signal, and protection. The body is not malfunctioning. It is adapting imperfectly to stresses it was never meant to endure continuously. At the center of this imbalance is the loss of muscular precision. The lower esophageal sphincter is not a rigid valve but a living muscle that responds to nerve input, posture, pressure, and timing. When it weakens or relaxes at the wrong moment, acid travels upward, not because it is excessive, but because the gatekeeper has lost discipline. This loss of discipline often stems from nutritional deficiencies, chronic stress hormones, inflammation, and disrupted circadian rhythms. The body does not fail suddenly. It compromises gradually, choosing survival over elegance. Equally important is the role of the nervous system. Digestion is a neurological event as much as a chemical one. When the vagus nerve is overstimulated by anxiety or undernourished by micronutrient depletion, stomach emptying slows, pressure builds, and reflux becomes more likely. Acid lingers longer than it should, not because the stomach is aggressive, but because communication has broken down. The brain and the gut fall out of conversation, and reflux becomes the language of that silence. The protective lining of the esophagus tells another part of the story. This tissue is designed to renew itself constantly, creating a resilient barrier against occasional exposure to acid. When inflammation, oxidative stress, or nutrient insufficiency weakens this lining, even normal digestive processes feel hostile. Sensitivity increases, pain thresholds drop, and the sensation of burning intensifies. What feels like excess acid is often heightened vulnerability. Modern approaches often attempt to suppress acid entirely, mistaking symptom control for healing. While this may bring short-term relief, it can deepen the underlying imbalance by impairing mineral absorption, altering gut bacteria, and weakening digestive feedback loops. The body, deprived of its natural signals, loses further clarity in regulation. The cycle continues, not because the body resists healing, but because it is being spoken to in a language it does not understand. To view acid reflux as imbalance is to recognize that the body is seeking restoration, not restraint. It is asking for strength where weakness has crept in, nourishment where depletion has occurred, and rhythm where chaos has taken hold. When balance returns, acid resumes its rightful role as a tool of digestion rather than a source of discomfort, and the body, once again, remembers how to protect itself. Vitamin D enters the physiology of acid reflux in a way that is easy to overlook because its influence is quiet and regulatory rather than forceful. It does not neutralize acid, coat the stomach, or numb sensation. Instead, it supports the systems that decide where acid belongs and when it should remain contained. At its core, vitamin D functions as a signaling molecule, influencing gene expression in muscles, immune cells, and nerves. When levels are adequate, these systems operate with coherence. When deficiency exists, coordination begins to unravel in subtle but meaningful ways. The lower esophageal sphincter depends on sustained muscle tone and precise timing. This muscle must remain closed at rest and relax only during swallowing. Vitamin D contributes to calcium handling within muscle cells, allowing for efficient contraction and relaxation cycles. Without sufficient vitamin D, muscles fatigue more easily and lose their ability to maintain tension over time. The result is not paralysis but inconsistency. The sphincter relaxes when it should not, allowing gastric contents to move upward despite normal acid production. Beyond muscle mechanics, vitamin D plays a critical role in immune modulation. Chronic acid reflux is rarely just a mechanical problem. It is often accompanied by low-grade inflammation in the esophagus and surrounding tissues. Vitamin D helps regulate inflammatory cytokines, reducing unnecessary immune activation that can thin protective tissues and heighten pain perception. In this way, it lowers the sensitivity of the esophageal lining, not by numbing it, but by restoring immune restraint. There is also a neurological dimension to vitamin D's influence. Receptors for vitamin D are present in the enteric nervous system, the intricate neural network governing digestion. These receptors help regulate smooth muscle coordination and feedback between the gut and the brain. When vitamin D is insufficient, nerve signaling becomes less precise. Gastric emptying may slow, pressure within the stomach increases, and reflux becomes more likely. This is not excess acid but delayed movement, a timing issue rather than a chemical one. Vitamin D deficiency is common in individuals with chronic digestive symptoms, particularly those who avoid sunlight, consume restrictive diets, or use long-term acid-suppressing medications. This deficiency creates a feedback loop in which weakened muscle tone and heightened inflammation reinforce each other. Over time, reflux shifts from an occasional event to a persistent pattern, not because the stomach has become aggressive, but because the structures meant to regulate it have lost resilience. When vitamin D is restored through nourishment and light, the body does not react dramatically. It recalibrates. Muscle tone improves gradually, inflammatory signals quiet down, and neural coordination becomes steadier. The esophagus is exposed to less acid not through force, but through regained competence. The body resumes its natural containment strategies, demonstrating that healing often occurs not through suppression, but through restoration of foundational balance. Vitamin B6 and vitamin B12 influence acid reflux not by acting directly on the stomach's acid-producing cells, but by shaping the nervous system that governs digestion. Digestion is an orchestrated process guided by electrical signals, neurotransmitters, and rhythmic muscle contractions. When these signals are steady, food moves downward with purpose and timing remains intact. When they become erratic, digestion loses its flow, pressure accumulates, and reflux becomes more likely. B vitamins quietly sustain this neurological order. Vitamin B6 is essential for the synthesis of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and gamma-aminobutyric acid, all of which play roles in gut motility and stress regulation. The digestive tract responds directly to emotional and neurological states. Under chronic stress, the body prioritizes vigilance over digestion, slowing gastric emptying and tightening some muscles while relaxing others inappropriately. Without adequate B6, the nervous system struggles to transition smoothly into the parasympathetic state required for digestion. Acid remains in the stomach longer, not because it is excessive, but because movement has stalled. Vitamin B12 operates at the level of nerve integrity and signal transmission. It supports the myelin sheath that insulates nerves, allowing electrical impulses to travel efficiently. In the digestive tract, this efficiency determines how accurately the esophagus senses irritation, how effectively the stomach coordinates contractions, and how clearly the gut communicates with the brain. When B12 levels decline, nerves become hypersensitive yet inefficient. This paradox leads to exaggerated discomfort from minor reflux events and impaired muscular responses that would normally prevent them. Chronic acid reflux often coexists with reduced B12 absorption. Stomach acid is required to release B12 from food, yet long-term acid suppression interferes with this process. Over time, deficiency develops silently, manifesting as fatigue, tingling, and digestive irregularity. These neurological changes further impair gut motility and sphincter control, reinforcing reflux rather than resolving it. What begins as symptom management can unintentionally deepen the underlying dysfunction. The gut-brain axis depends on balance rather than intensity. B6 and B12 help regulate this balance by ensuring that nerve signals are neither excessive nor weak. They support calm, rhythmic digestion instead of reactive or delayed patterns. When gastric emptying improves and esophageal reflexes become more precise, pressure within the stomach decreases. Reflux events diminish not because acid is neutralized, but because it moves forward as intended. Restoring these vitamins does not create immediate silence in symptoms. Instead, it restores clarity in communication. The nervous system regains its ability to distinguish between threat and normal function. Muscles respond appropriately to neural cues. Sensation becomes proportional rather than exaggerated. In this restored dialogue between nerves and digestion, acid reflux often loses its dominance, revealing itself not as a chemical problem, but as a neurological one rooted in depletion rather than excess. Vitamin A speaks directly to the body's ability to protect itself at the boundary between what is internal and what is external. The lining of the esophagus and stomach is not simply a passive surface exposed to acid but a living, renewing interface designed to withstand stress when properly nourished. Every swallow, every digestive wave, every exposure to gastric contents tests this barrier. When it is strong, these challenges pass unnoticed. When it is compromised, even normal digestion can feel injurious. The epithelial cells that form this lining are among the most rapidly renewing cells in the body. Their renewal depends on vitamin A, which regulates cellular differentiation and guides immature cells into fully functional protective tissue. Without adequate vitamin A, this renewal slows and becomes less organized. The lining thins, mucus production decreases, and the surface becomes more permeable. Acid that would normally be buffered now comes into closer contact with sensitive nerve endings, amplifying discomfort and inflammation. Vitamin A also supports the production of mucus, a critical but often overlooked defense against acid exposure. This mucus layer is not simply a lubricant but a biochemical shield that traps bicarbonate ions, creating a microenvironment that neutralizes acid at the tissue surface. When vitamin A levels are insufficient, mucus quality declines. The barrier remains present, but it is fragile, less cohesive, and easier to erode under repeated exposure. Reflux symptoms intensify not because acid has increased, but because protection has weakened. Inflammation further complicates this picture. Chronic reflux triggers immune activation in the esophageal lining, leading to swelling, cellular stress, and impaired healing. Vitamin A plays a role in immune regulation, helping to direct inflammatory responses toward resolution rather than persistence. It encourages repair without excessive scarring and supports tissue resilience rather than hypersensitivity. In its absence, inflammation lingers longer than necessary, prolonging discomfort and delaying recovery. Modern dietary patterns and digestive disorders often reduce vitamin A availability, either through inadequate intake or impaired absorption. Fat malabsorption, common in individuals with chronic digestive distress, limits the uptake of fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A. Over time, this creates a vulnerability at the very surfaces most exposed to acid. The body continues to produce acid as it should, but the tissues designed to tolerate it lose their strength. When vitamin A is restored, healing does not occur as an abrupt change but as a gradual thickening and strengthening of the barrier. Sensitivity decreases as nerve endings become less exposed. Mucus production improves, and the lining regains its ability to buffer acid naturally. The esophagus no longer reacts defensively to every exposure, allowing digestion to proceed without constant alarm. In this way, vitamin A reveals that reflux discomfort is often a problem of weakened boundaries, not excessive force, and that true relief arises when the body remembers how to defend itself with quiet efficiency. Vitamin E enters the landscape of acid reflux as a protector rather than a regulator, addressing the damage that accumulates when tissues are repeatedly exposed to irritation. Reflux is not a single event but a pattern, and with each episode the delicate lining of the esophagus encounters oxidative stress. This stress is generated when acid contact triggers inflammatory reactions that produce free radicals, unstable molecules that damage cell membranes and impair healing. Over time, this microscopic damage alters tissue sensitivity and resilience, turning occasional discomfort into chronic pain. Cell membranes are particularly vulnerable in this environment because they are composed largely of lipids. Vitamin E, as a fat-soluble antioxidant, embeds itself within these membranes and shields them from oxidative injury. It stabilizes cellular structure, allowing cells to maintain integrity even under repeated stress. Without sufficient vitamin E, membranes become fragile, more permeable, and less capable of recovering after exposure to acid. Sensory nerves lying beneath the surface become more reactive, intensifying the perception of burning and discomfort. Inflammation and circulation are closely linked in reflux-related injury. Inflamed tissues often experience reduced microcirculation, limiting oxygen and nutrient delivery precisely when repair is needed most. Vitamin E supports healthy blood flow by protecting red blood cells and vascular linings from oxidative damage. Improved circulation enhances tissue oxygenation and accelerates the delivery of nutrients required for regeneration. This creates an internal environment where healing can occur efficiently rather than stagnating. Vitamin E also interacts with other antioxidants in a cooperative network. It works alongside vitamin C and glutathione to recycle oxidized molecules back into functional forms. This network reduces the cumulative burden of oxidative stress rather than addressing damage in isolation. In chronic reflux, where exposure is repetitive, this cooperative defense becomes essential. It prevents small injuries from compounding into structural weakness and persistent inflammation. Deficiency in vitamin E is subtle and often overlooked, yet its effects are cumulative. Diets low in healthy fats or impaired fat absorption reduce its availability to tissues most in need of protection. Over time, this deficiency does not cause reflux directly but lowers the threshold at which tissue injury occurs. Acid exposure that was once tolerable becomes painful, and healing slows with each episode. The body is not producing more acid, it is losing its capacity to withstand normal physiological stress. When vitamin E is replenished, the shift is gradual and restorative. Tissues become less reactive as oxidative stress decreases. Cell membranes regain stability, inflammation resolves more efficiently, and circulation supports repair rather than perpetuating injury. The esophagus becomes quieter not because acid has vanished, but because damage no longer accumulates unchecked. In this context, vitamin E demonstrates that lasting relief from reflux often depends on protecting tissues from repeated harm, allowing the body's natural repair processes to function without interruption.